could you speak to your experience as a woman and person of color in the legal space specifically?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not easy. As I was preparing for this podcast and reflecting, it actually caused me to remember
Oh,
like
wow.
specific things that had happened that I just have become very desensitized to over time.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Um, and I've just found ways to deal with, certain situations that it doesn't really ring anything in me anymore.
Hmm.
And then, it occurred to me that for someone that's at a different stage in their life, that might be useful for them to know that, they're
Yeah.
not alone. The first time I walked into an on-campus interviewing session, I was a 2L. This is the formal on-campus interviews, where you
Hmm.
go and you go to a hotel, you knock on the door, it's very awkward, and someone opens the door, you go in and you have your interview.
Right.
The very first interview I did, which was with a very large law firm, New York based, I opened the door and the partner who was there looked at me and he said, "Oh, you weren't what I was expecting." Um,
Wow.
and That's probably not what you want to hear on your first interview.
No,
It was
definitely not.
very jarring to me at that time. And there's been a whole series of things that have happened since then that are along the same lines, right? I've,
Hmm.
worked with a client once where we were negotiating a deal and he didn't want to push a point, but that point was very important to the company
Hmm.
that I had worked with. And I said, don't worry, this is not a point. They'll agree to it. Like this should not be something that you're worried about, and it's important for us, so we need to go with it. And we disagreed on how to approach this issue, but I felt very strongly that I was approaching it the right way,
Yeah.
and so I went forward with my way, which he was
Hmm.
unhappy about. But what happened next was exactly what I thought would happen next. They were okay with it, and we were able to get what we needed. And at the end of it, he's like, "Oh, I guess you must have some experience in this." And it's like, yes, yeah, actually, do.
You'd think.
And just even last year, we did an exercise with some high school students, and we called it Career Bingo. And it listed the bingo squares were things that were about each of the different volunteers. And for me, my square was I was a chemical engineer. I'm sitting there, in the middle of a room with a whole bunch of other people from Google and all these high school students running around. And nobody came up to me and asked me, like, was I the chemical engineer? Because, I don't look like one. And
Hmm.
so that's, definitely happened. That definitely happens and, continues to happen. And as somebody that is of an underrepresented group, you have to learn how to be able to cope with that and not continue to perpetuate that in your own practice, which is hard. One of the things that has been studied and that people research is that when you are a minority, you have this like scarce resource thought
Hmm.
where you look at the management and you say, oh, there's only one woman there, and therefore there can only ever be one woman. And so I have to compete with that one woman. Whereas if you're part of a majority class, you see, oh, okay, well, there's plenty of people like me. So, they'll be able to make room for me. Um,
Right.
that's not true as a minority. And so a lot of what I have to tell myself, and I spend a lot of time thinking about DI issues and working on DI issues. But even for me still, I will tell myself, or I'll catch myself thinking, oh, well, this group already has an Asian female, and therefore we can't support having another Asian female. So I better hold on to
Yeah.
here. And I find myself thinking that too sometimes. And I have to tell myself, hey, that's not true. There's, enough resources to support more than one of a person that looks like me. And, I should make sure that I'm, slowing down, providing the right sponsorship and mentorship so others that are like me can end up where I am. So I have to make sure that, the experiences that I've had and what that leads to aren't carried forward into the
Yeah.
future. And I have to be conscious
Yeah.
about that.
Well, definitely it's a work in progress, but that has quelled some of my personal anxieties a little bit. in the sense that I've spoken to so many attorneys who kind of express that as a woman specifically, it can be difficult. It's kind of structured as a man's world, but specifically in the legal field. So that was something I was admittedly nervous about in approaching law overall. So do you think when you were in college or in law school, you had to deal with that at all, or is it something that you kind of experienced more once you entered the professional field?
I think there's always the sense that you feel like you've had to fight to where you gotten to, right? Like you have to
Mhm.
fight for every last opportunity. They're not handed to you. You have to fight for that promotion or, fight to be heard. While that can be tough, and while we all face that, it's not all bad. Like I
Yeah, of
think
course.
because you had to do that, I feel like I'm better at what I do because I've had to do that.
Mhm.
Um, so, there's always a silver lining.
Yeah. Builds
Um,
up some fight.
yeah, and there's, nothing like adversity to make you stronger, I guess. But,
Yeah.
I think the hope is that, when my daughter is, my age or, looking to make the same decisions that I'm making today, she won't be in that position. In that the world will have changed enough so that she doesn't feel what, I feel or what I felt over the course of my career. And, to be very clear, what I felt as a minority in the legal profession in patents is, very fractional of what my predecessors have felt in the road that
Yeah.
they've paved. And the hope is that every generation it'll be a little bit better. And hopefully I can do my part in making that better.
That's really great to hear. So hopefully when I enter the field, it'll even be a little better.
You're already in the field.
Um, yeah, I'm on my way.